Hi. I look so serious, don't I? Let me move this. How are you? Today is, let me check. Is it day 100 or was yesterday day 100? Let me look at my channel. View my channel. I have everything muted, I think. It is. Yeah, this is okay. No, it must. I don't know if the live, the thing that's happening, it is. Would it be considered 100 videos? This is the 100th? Yeah, it's going live now. I didn't check it a couple minutes ago. I should have. I don't know. Either this is my 100th video or yesterday's video was 100. I think it's counting this one because it's live now. I mean, I think so. Maybe when it posts as finished, It'll be 101. Well, anyway, I have reached 100 videos on my channel, whether it's this video that put me over the top or yesterday's video that put me over the top. I'm not quite sure. I I've been distracted and haven't really gotten that together in time for this moment. And it is day number, what did I tell you? It's day number, is it 16? I have to find my channel. It's day 17 today, not 16, 17. It's been 17 days that I've gone live every day. And, I can't really say I've been on time every time. But I did get my my countdown done ahead of time and rolling right today. You didn't have to wait for my countdown, but I took a long time to get it together right here, right now. Well, there's news. There was a shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And let me just find where it is. It's right here. I was watching a video earlier today that talked about the actual shooter. I don't really see any talk of this person. It was a trans guy, and yeah, I guess I can just play this. Okay, is this the beginning? His name used to be Robert, and but he legally changed his name. His parents, when he was a minor, his parents allowed him to change his name. And I guess if he's trans, he's a she. This is Robin. Well, now she is no longer. I'll just play it.
And there's a video, like a 10-minute. Actually, I've seen 2 videos now. 2 10-minute videos of this person. This is a picture. Let me select it. This is the picture right here. You're not gonna. Well, some people probably believe this. Somebody was saying it earlier in the chat, and I thought it was a joke. Robin Westman, and across the gun, it says, "Look, I guess the ammo cartridge." Kill Donald Trump. Rest in peace and tear. He was obsessed with Adam Lanza. Really, who shot up Sandy Hook. This is great. Look at this. Suck on this. Where is your God? So this was an intentional thing. This was intentional targeting to target this church that's also a school, a religious school. Where's your God? Suck on this. The big one. Fart ninja. I don't know what's that about. And then for the children. Ha 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 ha. Right? I'm just kind of like taken back by this. Let me show you some other stuff. The video, I don't think I can show the video because, well, we might have to come back later on Rumble. I think like YouTube is very particular about manifestos, and so, from my past experience. So there's one video of this person just showing their manifesto. I don't really want to go into that too much. I think we'll do it on Rumble. I'll come back live on Rumble later. But there's a video here.
This message brought to you by BlackRock and ExxonMobil.
BlackRock and ExxonMobil. Crazy.
Sponsored by Pabst Blue Ribbon. Brandon Herrera for president. Yeah, I met Brandon Herrera at SHOT Show last year. He and I had a conversation.
I really wonder if this was the person that was making all these fake calls, fake active shooter hoaxes.
Brief conversation, but I think we agreed on a lot of things. So, y'all should vote for Brandon Herrera for president. Shit.
Is he vaping? Is that a
I
vape?
didn't ask for life. You didn't ask for death. I'll make my own fucking stars.
No mainstream media is covering the trans shooter. They tried to
Yeah.
scrub the internet of his presence, and we are the keyboard warriors. Bullshit.
Right? Right. Yo, with that last press conference, like, the reporters asking about, like, hey, is this true? Is this what's good? There's nothing wrong with that. Let them clarify. And if it's not, then okay, we'll put it to rest. But I feel like they were being scolded for even asking the question. How dare you ask the question? You know?
Yeah. Watch my 9mm go bang.
Wow. So that's like, I guess that's supposed to be Jesus Christ, and he's on like a target, you know, like a target thing. Rounds. And then you got to wonder, like, who's this person's parents, right?
Congratulations on your new place.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate that, Christina. Let me show you something interesting. Who sent this to me? Bebecita, I hope you're doing good. I don't want to like show too much of the video. I think we'll do that on Rumble. I don't want to, because like I said, YouTube's very like finicky and stuff. So I'm not going to show the manifesto. There's like a manifesto thing of it. I'm not going to do that.
Okay. This guy, what's his name? Let me just stop sharing. This YouTuber I always get his name wrong. Icked-Mel. Yeah, so I guess I know there were 2 children who died. If you continue with the video, it talks about they show his mother. He actually looks a lot like his mother. And he changed his name legally, and his parents supported him in that. At a certain point, became Robin. And their family, I guess their mother, I don't know if she worked at the church because she retired, and they threw her some kind of party at the church in 2021. So their family had some kind of history with the church. And she looks like a really nice woman, his mother, and was very supportive of her son, who is now, well, he became her, and now she has passed away. I have a sibling, and it's really hard when you're not around. I've never met my sibling, so I don't know. My father had another family he got remarried and had 3 kids, and the youngest is gender neutral at this point. There was a time when she was, it's such a challenge to speak about it, and I think it would help if I knew them. They were born a female, and they changed their name when they were a minor, but it wasn't legal, unlike with this kid. I guess my stepmother and my father wanted them to wait till they were 18 to legally change their name. And when they turned 18, they did. And I remember my stepmother called it, she's an adult, she called it Brett Day, when she legally changed her name to Brett. Sorry. In my mind, it's really hard. I will always think of them as a female. It's really hard for me not to think of them. See, I have to really be conscious. It's hard to speak about a neutral gender. But they were once him, he, that was the goal. They take hormones, male hormones, and they have a beard, a little stubble. And their original intention was to become male. But at some point, and this is before my father's death, they had an awakening and realized that they were neutral. They wanted to be neutral. And they have a picture of themselves up as when they were female, and they were wearing a dress, with a kitty cat, and looked very feminine, and that's why I've always struggled with thinking of them as not a female, because they have always been quite feminine. And I know that my stepmother has, even though she's been very supportive of my sibling, I know it was my stepmother's nightmare to go through this, and I know it was always my stepmother's dream for their child to wake up and realize that, hi, Dean. Okay, you don't have to do that. Thank you, though. Dean, I don't want to waste all of this. Okay, all right, I got it. I know, but Dean, I was I was saving that for another time, but thank you very much. You didn't have to do that. Thank you. I guess you just want to make your appearance. Make everyone think that you do stuff for me when it's really me that does everything for you.
I feed my wife.
But Dean, you don't. I'm always feeding you. It's not that. You don't really do very much. I feed you. I do everything. But I appreciate this much. Thank you, Dean. I love you, Dean. Are you okay, Dean? Yeah, so I just know that it was my stepmother's. I mean, she's really gone over, over and beyond being, she she's so devoted to her children. Of course, I know that. And she's gone over and beyond being supportive of my youngest sibling. And I know that my youngest sibling, he put some other things in there. I know that my youngest sibling, that meant a lot to her, to them. And my youngest sibling also has started a relationship with someone I believe was once a female, is now a male. And I'm sure that might have had some effect on her. I'm not sure, because their relationship, it's an interesting, situation. But that might have affected my youngest sibling to some degree. I know, and it's interesting that it happened before my father died. Because my father was so conservative, obviously not conservative enough to not abuse me. And I, when someone is trans, my understanding, and I know this is not common knowledge, my understanding is that it's a genetic thing that is triggered only when someone is subjected to some form of SEXUALABUSE. I know our society doesn't know what causes it. It's a genetic thing, but it's only triggered by that. My brother, I always call him my father. It's so weird. I guess somehow my mind links him to my father. My brother Mark, I caught him cross-dressing with his friends, one of his friends. They were riding a city bus in Princeton with wigs and high heel shoes, and I mean, it was the most shocking thing. I just got on a bus and I sat down, and oh my god, I see my brother and his friend all dressed up like girls, and he made me swear not to tell my mother. I never did. You know, I told my mother later in life, as an adult. I was saying that I didn't ever tell my mother about the medical procedure that my pediatrician put me through without her permission or knowledge. I told her later in life when I was an adult. And, of course, my mother didn't want to believe that at that point. She wouldn't have ever believed it back then either. And that's the thing about my mother. She was just a person severely in denial. At the same time, though, she wasn't. It's like, like in terms of, the father of my gender neutral sibling. That's a mouthful. Okay, it's hard to speak correctly about it. To speak gender neutral. He that's my father, who is the father of those 3 younger children, was the Zodiac killer. Okay, Dennis Wayne Elliott. What are you doing, Dean? Dean, what are you doing? You're doing what? Okay, all right. Just don't do anything with the electrical, okay? I don't know why you have to do that when I'm on my live stream. It's very distracting, Dean. Dean, just leave it alone for now. You can do it later when I'm not live, okay? Can you please stop doing things when I'm live? Can you lock that door too while you're at it? If you're not, you can come in here and sit down or go downstairs and do what you were doing, but please just stop doing that, okay? All right? Do you mind? Okay. Just feel like you're trying to distract my live stream, Dean. I don't know. Okay, and remember, when you speak, the microphone can pick up the speaking to Lily. Okay, so I need you to be quiet. You can talk to her without using your voice. Okay. All right, I appreciate it, Dean. Yeah, as for so that was their father. And my stepmother is very upset at me because, she's very protective of her children. And I was talking about my mother, who is now deceased. I was talking about her and how she was in denial, but she wasn't. She wasn't. I don't know. I almost feel like she was engineering denial. Like she was conscious and she wanted people to think what she wanted, and she would fake denial because she would snap out of the denial, in and out of denial, and if she willed it. So that's not really denial, is it? It's like she's trying to engineer denial, which is different from me. I really truly was in actual denial. And my mother's was more calculated for effect, to make it appear like she was innocent when she wasn't. In terms of my father, she protected my father because she didn't want our lives to be ruined. I mean, our lives were already ruined. That's what I felt like when I was a little, well, at the time. I think I was probably around 5 or close to it when I was trying to, whenever the taxi, I'm not the taxi, the school bus. I'm going to look up when that happened. School bus, kitties, he called them Zodiac. Like, when did he do that? When did he when did his letter threaten that? 1969, October 13th. That was just before, was it my 4th birthday? So I was barely 4. Yeah, he it says February. Okay. Right. Some school children make nice targets. This is part of the letter. My father, um, what is it? When you speak a letter, what is that called again? What's the word? Dean? What's the word when you speak a letter and somebody writes it? It's not transcription. That's I was transcribing his words.
You must be.
Well, what is it
And
called? The
and
word.
you're writing it now.
Yeah, but what's the word? Do you remember the term?
Yes, it's taking dictation.
Dictate. That's what I'm looking for. He dictated the letters. He asked for my feedback on occasion, and sometimes I offered it because I wanted to tell him what I thought. But he would command me to write what he wanted me to write. Sometimes he would take my feedback, sometimes he wouldn't. Yeah, so it was after this Zodiac letter on October 13th, 1969, that I wanted to turn in. I was panicked because he called me kiddo, and the kitties, he wanted to blow up a school bus of kitties, and that was too close to home for me. I'm a kitty, and that's when I panicked. Well, it was, the taxi driver too. That was when it that was okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just, memories are strange things. Okay, so I did say taxi driver, and yeah, it was right after the taxi driver. That was another time. Zodiac. It was in the Presidio area of San Francisco. I was actually physically in the taxi. It was Paul Stein, the taxi driver. It was in the Presidio Heights neighborhood of San Francisco on October 11th, 1969. Okay, so that's why I'm connecting them, because they're very, in my mind, I'm connecting them because the taxi driver, that happened on the 11th, October 11th, 1969. And the letter that talked about the kitties was October 13th, 1969. That's why I'm connecting them in my mind. See, little things like that really, really confirm. I mean, I don't need confirmation. I got a lot of confirmation from others. I mean, the whole thing was witnessed by the FBI, and um, I was telling the FBI everything at the time when I was little. I was turning 4 on the 21st, right after those two, the letter and the taxi driver. And I was in that taxi, it was a very violent moment, blood everywhere. And I could feel the pain in my body. I'm a little, turning 4. I was 3. And I just remember the intense pain in my body, just watching my father as he just became a demon, and he just acted so fast, and it was horrible, you know. And that's when I stepped it up, and I'm sure that, when I came to Daddy and I told him, and he probably encouraged me. And there was a time when my father called into that show. Let's see. Zodiac called into, it was like a news show or something. It was in 1969. A man called San Francisco police. No, it was a show. There was a show on TV, identifying himself as the serial killer known as the Zodiac, and agreed to call Dunbar during AM San Francisco's live broadcast if either attorney Melvin Belly or attorney F. Lee Bailey were present on air. I keep forgetting F. Lee Bailey's history in my past. So that was F. Lee Bailey. So it was called AM San Francisco. Right. They were on the TV, and the man who was on the TV was urging, the Zodiac to please call into the show and, turn himself in. And I'm like, Denny, please, I called him Denny. My parents thought it was really cute when I called him Denny. It was probably Daddy. I'm talking about Clint Eastwood. I know it sounds really funny that Clint Eastwood was there. He's an actor, Claire. He was there, okay? And he was raising me, okay? Clint Eastwood raised me. He was there when I was born, and he raised me until we were separated when I was 5 years old. When we left California and went to the East Coast, and that's when I was separated from him forever. And I was, my next stop was kindergarten, and I was 2 weeks late thanks to my parents. They didn't really take care to work around my school schedule. It just seemed like, my school, I was always interrupted. My school schedule was always interrupted. Every time we moved, it was the middle of the school year, every time. And I was 2 weeks late for kindergarten that year in 1960. It was 1970. So all of this happened the previous year, at the end of the year. And, I was so it was 1969. I'm just trying to see what this, no, I'm just trying to, okay, so he called into the San Francisco police. What date was that? The day after he called Melvin Belly on the day after my birthday, my 4th birthday. Okay, I guess I'll share my screen. This is my birthday is October 21st, and it was the day after my birthday. On October 22nd, 1969, a man claiming to be the Zodiac Killer calls lawyer Melvin Belly on a KGO TV morning talk show. News anchor Walter Cronkite introduces the story. Belly was supposed to meet the killer later in the day, but he never showed up. Yeah, he chickened out. And I was so disappointed. I thought this was it. I was so excited. So this all happened at the same time, and that's why it's all connected. So the first thing that happened was the taxi driver, which was a horrific moment in time for me as a young child, on October 11th. And then my father makes me write the letter on the 13th, October 13th, 1969, where he threatens to blow up a school bus full of kiddies. And then I get him, I urge him to call in. We're watching these shows every morning, and I get him to call. And where is my mother? I know people are like, where is your mother? My mother was either passed out, drunk. I don't know. My mother was she was always drunk
or high on drugs.
Right. She was always popping pills, and she was passed out a lot of the time. But this is a morning show, so my mother was sleeping in, okay? And my father and I were awake. I don't know about the baby. Let's see. Is the baby born? Yes, he's born. He was born in 1968. So he's like a year and a half old, but he's probably still in his crib. And I'm with my father in the morning. He's getting up, going to work. My father was very regimented, very routine oriented. And Every day, for his entire life, he reads the entire New York Times and Wall Street Journal. Now, in later years, it probably included other publications in addition, probably some, but he always had to have the physical daily paper, New York Times. He read it from front to back, and the Wall Street Journal from front to back. I mean, I once asked him, do you read everything? And he's like, no, I just kind of scan the headlines and I read what interests me, but he goes through the entire paper. He reads everything that interests him every morning. And, he really enjoyed Sundays because then he got the Sunday papers, and he would spend he'd spend his whole morning on that, drinking his coffee. And, my family, I'm talking about my siblings, the kids he had with his second family. I'm sure, they know what I'm talking about. And I know Inez, my stepmother, joined him with that. My mother was not a paper reader. She didn't read newspapers. She liked magazines. She didn't read books or anything. My mother she was very lazy and she didn't do a lot of reading, but my father was a ferocious reader of newspapers. He read a book here and there. He did read, but he was just always reading a newspaper. That's how I remember him. But okay, so the 11th is the taxi driver. The 2 days later, he's dictating a letter for me to read, and I'm really upset about it. And I have to do something. And then the day after my birthday, which is like 9 days later, I'm getting him to call into the show. I mean, they said that he called into the police as well. It says, this other thing says, try to find it here. I don't know where that says that, but he obviously called in to the police as well. That was me trying to get him. I wanted him to see justice. I wanted this to end. I didn't, and it didn't. This was very disappointing when he didn't. He chickened out and he didn't go. He really wanted to turn himself in. He really did. There was a part of him that had a conscience, and he knew he needed help. He knew it. And I was trying to get him to get that help, and he wouldn't do it. It says, do you think it's real? Is the collar a fake, or is it all a hoax? No, it was real. I assure you. Okay, so that's it. That's a really interesting look at Chelsea Clinton. I think that's a cute picture of her. I've never seen her look that incredible. So what is this? Okay, History Hollywood, Zodiac. Okay, and there's no video there. Okay. So it was the day after my birthday. See, it all like falls together, doesn't it? And after that, I was trying so hard. It didn't work. Okay, I was really disappointed. And so then and I'm sure I would talk to Daddy about it, and he probably, encouraged me, to tell my Uncle Norm. My Uncle Norm was visiting. He was visiting us at that time. He was like, Uncle Norm was a hippie in those days, and he was in San Francisco, and he was chanting, and he'd come and he'd chant into our ears at night, and he'd chant us to sleep at night like their father did, my grandpa Elliott. It's not Grandpa Willis. I know, I don't even know if those kids, my siblings, my youngest siblings, even like, did they ever meet Henry Willis? I don't even know, because he passed away. at a certain point. And I don't know if they ever even knew my grandma's second husband. My grandma had this affair with Henry Willis, who was married. They were both married. And that's supposedly how Norman was, he's 6 years younger than 5 years younger than my father. That's our family has rumors. And that was supposedly how Norm was conceived, because Norm is his genetic son, but that's not how. I mean, maybe they had an affair. It was possible. Many times they do this. They implant the woman when she's had unprotected sex with someone, and then she conceives. But that's not how Norman was conceived. He was implanted in my grandmother. Well, actually, no, he wasn't. He was, wait, how does this work? No, he was. I'm sorry. I have to remember, I have to think about it. He is actually Queen Elizabeth's genetic son, who was implanted in my grandma Ruth, who is the Queen's older sister. And that's how, but he was, I do not believe he was naturally conceived. I just didn't, I do not believe so, because and I remember Uncle Norm telling me that he now knows that his father, Grandpa Elliott, was his father. And he once had that remark in my presence, and I agree. He looks he looks like my father, and my grandpa. He just had, he was implanted, which means he had more than one father, and one was Henry Willis, and the other was my grandpa Robert Dale Elliott, and he was named, his middle name is Dale, just like his father. It's funny because my father, Dennis Wayne Elliott, was not named after their father. And my grandmother didn't think that that was her child, even though he was her genetic child. The firstborn was. She just didn't give birth to him. It was the Queen Elizabeth, who gave birth to my father, Dennis. But he was my grandma Ruth's genetic son. It's kind of interesting, huh? And they're both my father, Dennis, and Uncle Norm are my genetic fathers, and both of them. But the rumor in the family was that I was Uncle Norm's genetic child, because my mother had a threesome with my father and Norm, the night before the wedding in December of 1964. And she got pregnant. She was actually technically pregnant because she didn't. She was very. I don't know why I'm getting into this. She never missed a period, and she missed her period, and that's why she's so happy in her wedding photos. And Uncle Norm is just standing. He's like this 18-year-old kid or something, and he's standing. If he's 18, I don't even know. My father was 23, so yeah, he was 18. He's standing there in front of everybody looking so proud of himself because he got her pregnant. And she thought she had more of a likelihood of having a blonde baby if it was his sperm that fertilized her egg, but it didn't happen like that. I was implanted, okay? They implanted my mother probably, definitely before the night before the wedding. And I have many, many genetic fathers. Like, I don't even know how many. But yes, one of them is my father, Dennis Wayne Elliott, who is on my birth certificate as my father. And another is Norman Dale Elliott, a direct descendant of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. And he's not tall. He's very petite, kind of probably more like Sally Hemings, right? But I've got those tall genes. Thomas Jefferson was very tall. I do. And I believe Thomas Jefferson is one of my genetic fathers too. So, they doubled up a lot of people. Daddy, Clint Eastwood, is my genetic father more times over than any other father except for Jesus. Jesus Christ is my father many times over as well. Both Daddy and Jesus are my father many times over. That's what Daddy told me. And I anyway. But getting back to the zodiac thing, my grandmother, my stepmother is just very, very upset. Just like my mother was very, very upset. My mother did not want this to get out. She said it would ruin our lives. I mean, when I came forward to Norm, who was visiting us at this time in 1969, he was in San Francisco and he was visiting us in Palo Alto. I told him, and he believed me, and he he came with me to confront my mother, and it really looked like this was it. He was going to turn my father in to police. And my mother said, because I had this, okay, my father kept a ripped square of that shirt from, it was striped with black stripes on it. He kept it in a box on his desk and we called it the den in that house. It was, I've looked at the house in modern, it was up for sale. It's like a $2 million house or something now. It's not huge, but it's a beautiful house. And the den used to be, it's now, is it the bathroom now? I think they turned it into the bathroom, the den that he used to. I wrote his zodiac letters inside of it. It's now a bathroom. The bathroom used to be closer to like where the fireplace is in the living room. I mean, it was right behind the fireplace in the living room, and across from the bedroom that was right next to the living room. I had the master bedroom, which was in the back, and then the baby's room was right next to mine, and then the den was like right after that. At the end of the hallway. It was kind of in the middle of the hallway, and then there's the entrance to the kitchen. If you want to like more information, you should go to, I guess it's The Truth Heals. Yeah, The Truth Heals over on TikTok. I made a whole video about it over there. We confronted my mother. I showed Norm this piece of fabric that was all bloody, had dried blood on it. I had already shown my mother, and my mother said, why is Denny keeping a woman's rag on his desk? She was just, that's what she was saying it was. And, and so I went, I showed it to Norm, and he believed me because, he knew all about the zodiac and everything. And I was showing him the evidence with the shirt. And I guess he confronted my father first, and my father broke down and admitted that it was him. And Norm was like, this is it's you that's been doing all this. And he's like, he was all ready to turn his brother in. And then we went to my mother, and he thought my mother would be, I told him, I tried to show it to my mother, and she thinks it's some woman's rag. And so we went to her together, and she said, she was like, when he confronted her about it, and he, he knew what it was, and, what are we going to do now? He said, and she's like, you can't go forward about this. It'll ruin our lives, is what she said. And I looked to, and the first thing I thought was, well, in my mind, my life is already ruined. What is she talking about? Lily, what are you doing, Lily? what's going on? I
Well,
heard.
like you
Did
can.
you hear my Lily? Huh?
She's growling at you.
Were you growling at kitty cats? Yes, little girl. Oh. Yeah, so you'll ruin our lives. And Norm was like, I was like so disappointed. He's like, well, I don't want to ruin your lives. Like a coward. Like the coward he is and continues to be to this day.
Not now, he's dead.
No, Norm is alive. He's alive and well. Yes, he is. He's alive and well in not Park City. In what's the main city in Utah? Isn't that weird? I'm thinking of Park City, and I've never lived in Park City. And Salt Lake City. Yeah, he's a professor emeritus at the University of Utah. He's alive and well. I actually went to go see him after my mother died. My stepmother's. I happened to call him because I hadn't called him for years and years and years, and I happened to call my stepmother for the first time in years and years and years. I just called everybody. I called my brother. I haven't talked to my family for a long, long time. I figured, with my mother's death, it was important for me to at least reach out. And, I just somehow something just came over me. I just needed to call everybody. And I talked to Norm, and he was really nice. And I appreciated that. And because, my stepmother, it was uncomfortable to talk to her. She's so angry at me, but she was civil towards me at least. And she asked if I had called him because she's very close with Uncle Norm. And I guess that's now her replacement husband. I'm really not sure. Uncle Norm is not doing well mentally. He has dementia for sure at this point. So I'm sure she enjoys being in total domination of him. And of course, he doesn't have any women in his life anymore. So he clings to Inez. Him and Inez always had kind of a friendship and a bond. And he had a bond with my mother too. He likes to have bonds with my father's wives, apparently. But anyway, I was moved, we were trying to figure out where we were going to move to at that point. Dean needed to get the hell out of Georgia. This was before. Okay, so we're talking after my mother's. It was early 2023. Dean's mother had not yet passed away. She passed away in August, and that anniversary is coming up in a couple days. Dean, I need make sure I have this water up here for a reason, but okay, I can get more, I guess. So it was early 2023. I'm thinking it was after I had gone up to Peterborough, New Hampshire, perhaps, because I went up to Peterborough, New Hampshire pretty early in the month. And I'm thinking I got home and called everybody. I called everybody. I called my brother. I called Inez, and I called Norm. And, and I actually, I always refer to this when I talk to Norm since I've been able to remember everything. And he always just kind of like talks around it. He doesn't disagree with me. He just doesn't want to talk about it directly with me. And he's nice about it. And I appreciate that. But Dean and I were trying to figure out where to go. And we, after I talked to Norm, I thought, hey, I should check out Salt Lake City. Maybe that's a good place for us. We were looking at different like tax-free areas to live. I don't know that there's anything tax-free in Utah. But I lived there. I lived with my uncle Norm for a brief amount of time, for like I guess a school years, the space of a school year. It was 1990. Was it 7? Yeah, I drove up there in 97 and left in June of 98. Um, yeah, so it was kind of, I have a history there, a little bit of one. Um, yeah, and I was thinking, I should check it out, and I should go talk to my uncle Norm, because there was a time when Norm told me about my money. When I was staying with him, he told me that if I filled out some paperwork that he could get some money from my father. And I filled out the paperwork for him because, he was letting me stay in his home for free. And I wanted him to have money. He really struggled financially in those days. He was working part-time as an associate professor or something like that in those days. And, at the end, he couldn't even feed his cats. I don't know why. I mean, he, I don't know why he was so poor. I wonder if it was like an act. And I ended up having to buy food for his cats. Um, and he knew I would buy food for his cats because I'm a cat lover. I'm an animal lover. But yeah, when I was staying with him, he did, he had me fill out this paperwork that, it was actually a power of attorney or something, so he could get money from my father. It was my money. And I remember at one point he asked me, why is it that if you have money, why is it that you don't get any? And I told him, I just, at that point, I didn't understand. I didn't remember anything. But when he told me I had money, I agreed. It hit home that I did. I just didn't yet remember all the details about that money. So, but he didn't get the money for the longest time. And then I finally moved out. I left. And I guess it was in June of 98. I left. And then I came back to get my stuff, and he still hadn't received the money. But then when I removed all my stuff from his house, and, I came with a van and everything, and I packed it up, and he didn't want me to go. He wanted me to stay in Salt Lake because he really thought I was the key to that money. Like if I stayed with him, he would get the money. But I was like, no, I have to move on with my life. I'm sorry. Can I have, I remember my cousin, who's actually my father. I have such a weird family. Norm told me he had gotten a vasectomy, and that my father had impregnated his wife so they could have a baby, and that was Colin, my cousin. And so it was really my father's. He's genetically my brother, but I grew up with him as my cousin. And I was living with him too in Salt Lake City. It was Colin and my uncle Norm. And Colin was really into my TV set. I had a nice big Sony TV, and he wanted I let him have it. I was in the room that Norman had once used as an office, and he had a little TV in there, and it was like a little, like, it was really small, but that's all. That was good enough for me. I didn't need my big TV, and I let Colin have the big TV, and he was in the front bedroom off the kitchen, and he was really, really attached to it. I guess he got really attached to it, but it was mine. And when I left and I came back to get everything that was mine, I needed my TV, and I wanted my TV. And I felt really bad that I was taking, Colin was so upset about that. And I felt really bad, but it was my TV, and I had let him watch it all those months. And I figured, maybe over those months, Norm would be able to save up his money and buy his son a really nice TV, maybe a nicer TV. It wasn't a big screen like everybody has today. It was just a bigger TV than he was used to. He got so attached to it, and he was so upset when I took it with me. But because I took all my stuff, as soon as I left and I got all my stuff out of there, that's when he got the money, my money. I had to be completely out of his house before he got it, and he got my money, and he had Nor I'm sure Norm was able to buy him a huge big screen, Colin, and they were happier than they'd ever been happy. And, I'm really happy for them that they had that life, because of my money, and I'm really, really glad, you know? So, knowing this, I decided to go to Salt Lake City just, to check it out. I hadn't been back since I left, and that was in '98, and to to see Norman in person because we had a lot to I just wanted to ask him about the money. Maybe he was waiting for me to go see him in person. Maybe he's not going to talk to me by phone, is what I figured. So I just went out there, and we were genuinely considering Salt Lake City as an option. There was this cool house that I saw online, and I wanted to see it in person. Wanted to check out everything, all the sites, and um and I don't know how I guess I should stop sharing all of this, huh? I should make myself bigger, at least. And, um, and I got there and I showed up and, I don't wear makeup anymore. I don't bleach out my hair. I don't tan my skin like I did in those days. I mean, I may not have been really tan when I lived in Salt Lake, but it was in the days when I was still, wearing makeup and lightening my hair, etc. And um and I was thinner. And so I showed up, there was Norm, he was smoking a cigarette at his front door, and I pulled up in my rental car and I said, "Norm." And I always surprise him when I come to Salt Lake, the last time I came, and ended up staying, I showed up, without telling him. He didn't expect me or anything. And he's like, "Oh," he was nice, he was courteous, and I'm like, "It's Claire." He didn't recognize me. And I'm sure he once told me that, he once told me, "What is it about women, when they get married, they just start to look matronly." And I'm sure that's what he thought about me because he said that about my stepmother, Inez. She looked different and then she got married to my father and she looked more matronly after she married him. And I remember he was just asking me back in the 90s, why is it that women, when they get married, they just start to look matronly? Obviously, he doesn't understand. They gain weight. I don't know. As women get older, we tend to gain weight, and I'm thinking that's what he's thinking. And he may not have seen Inez very often to know, how she really looks like, and maybe she got really, really skinny before the wedding, and that's the only time he had ever seen her in person, and so he thought she was really skinny, and she never was really skinny. And so it was just his perception of her. And I didn't know what he was talking about. I thought Inez looked the same to me. Um, but I think what it was is that he saw her at her thinnest, met her at her thinnest, didn't really see her in person, and then saw her again and she had put on the weight again. I mean, she's not a heavy person. She's just not skinny. But I had put on a lot of weight, since the last time he had seen me. And I'm sure in his mind, oh, she got, and I'm married too. In his mind, he didn't say anything, but I know he was thinking, oh, she got married and she got matronly. It was before, I mean, I didn't take off my coat, but yes, it was before I had my breasts removed. I was very I mean, I didn't take off my winter coat though. I had my long winter coat on. You couldn't really see anything, but yeah, you could see I was full there, I guess. I don't know. I had with this extra weight, I had very huge breasts. Breasts I always wanted to have when I was younger. Um, yeah. So he didn't say anything, but he was like, "No." He didn't believe me at first when I told him I was Claire. And I said, "Yeah, it's me. It's Claire." And he's like, "Oh, you don't look the way I remember you." And he's like, "Yeah, but it has been a lot of years." Yes, it has. He was just shocked. I mean, I guess I looked horrible to him. I don't know. In his mind, he probably had glorified the way I looked. I don't know. I don't know. I used to wear makeup, you know. Um, I don't know. And yeah, the weight does make me look different. I you can't see my bone structure in my face, and it does alter my appearance quite a bit. I do have to lose my weight. You might not recognize me when I lose my weight. I'll feel a lot better about myself though. But anyway, when I got there, yeah, he was just like, and I said, "Can we, can I talk to you for a little bit? Can I talk to you for a minute?" And he's like, and he invited me in, and he wasn't expecting me. He had all his Beatles albums, handy. He listens to the Beatles music, I guess he's heard all about me or something. I don't know if maybe I left him a lot of messages or something in the past. I don't know who updates him. He had Harry's autobiography. He had gotten it out of the library, and he had read it or read most of it. At the time, I hadn't yet read it all, and I asked him how it was, and he said it was really good. It just I just know he's, like, thinking of me and all this stuff that I've told him, or he's heard through the grapevine or something. I haven't talked to him for years and years and years, you have to understand, but he's up to date on Claire because he's listening to Beatles LPs, and Harry's, autobiography is right there, fresh from the library. And that's my genetic son. And of course he's a redhead also. So he's all like, interested in him, because he looks like him, right? He's the redhead in my family. That is that's where it comes from. Or at least from me, that's where it comes from. The Thomas Jefferson genes. And my Norman is a redhead. Um, Not as bright a redhead. He was never really a bright redhead. Just, kind of ginger like, I guess you would say. And he doesn't look like he has red hair now. I don't know. Well, now it's all gray. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, so we talked, and yeah, it was really an odd conversation. He was obviously not himself anymore, and he wanted to let me know, I guess in his mind, this was not what I was doing. I was just saying hello to him. Yeah, showing up like Claire always shows up. He knows I'm married, and I showed up in my rental car. Dean is not with me. I'm by myself. Uh, and he wants me to know, that um, he tries to keep things simple in his life now, like in case I think that I want to move in with him, he's trying to keep things simple now. He's gotten older and he needs to keep things simple. I'm like, "Oh, I know, I know. I'm not here to move in like I last time. Last time I showed up to his doorstep in 98, 97, I guess it was. He was the one that um that wanted me to stay. I mean, I was there to escape Los Angeles at the time. I was going through a lot with my memories, and I hadn't yet remembered the zodiac stuff. And Norman is very much a part of that part of my life, and he was watching me with wonder in those days, like seeing the beginnings of my memories. I would talk about certain things, and he would, like, his eyes would widen, like, "Oh my goodness, she's beginning to remember," but he wouldn't say anything. But I could just see he was just like so interested in how my memory process was evolving, because I was so young at the time, you know. But here I am, I'm in his face, and I'm telling him all the zodiac stuff, but he's like, "Well, I know." He's just skirting the issue. He doesn't want to talk about it. And I said, "Well, eventually, it may not be something that's public now, but eventually it will be." And he's like, well, okay, well, I'll just deal with that when it becomes public. You know, he's trying to be considerate. I know a lot of people would think, oh, he's just trying to be polite to Claire, but he knows I know that he knows I remember, and he's just so grateful that it's not public, because I guess he would be, like, he's very close to Inez, and I know Inez thinks, like, I don't know, she doesn't believe me. She probably thinks I'm crazy, or maybe she thinks I'm being malicious and making it up. I'm not sure, but or maybe a little of both. But Norman was there, and he knows the truth, but he's not going to tell Inez. And he talks to her regularly on the phone, and I think she's a very big comfort to him. And he doesn't want to jeopardize that friendship at all, because he's older now, he's more fragile. He doesn't have anyone. His mother's dead. He doesn't have any women in his life. I mean, there are some friends who come by apparently and walk with him and stuff. He was a professor, and I don't know, I guess he was part of a church. He is part of a church. There are women who take an interest in him for whatever reason. And but yeah, he's very careful how he talks to me about that time period. And then I brought up the subject of the money, because I thought maybe I need to be there in person for him to talk to me to open up about that, because he did openly talk about it to me in 1998 when I had no idea what he was talking about. And so I bring it up again, and he acts like he just doesn't respond. It's so weird. He's pretty good. I guess, my whole family is really good at keeping top secret information top secret. They're very used to classified information. And, he was very, he somehow did not react and didn't give me any information, gave me no confirmation, and yet was very polite to me. I mean, it's a really tricky balance. But yeah, Norm managed to do that with me. So, I mean, he is functioning on some level, even if he has dementia. You can see the look in his eye, the look of confusion in his eyes. It's clear he has dementia, but on certain levels, just like I think of Elisabeth, he functions pretty highly. And that's one area where he doesn't have a lot of his memory of details sometimes, but yeah, he was able to keep everything neutral and not confirm or deny, which was really remarkable to me. And yeah, we talked for about an hour. And then after that hour, I think it was when my uncle Steve came up in conversation that something shifted. He was talking about how, we were talking about he gets home care, he has emphysema. He seemed to not want to talk about his medical situation very much. I don't know, but he was talking about how he was really worried. He had fallen and broken his hip, I guess it was, a few years ago, and he gets worried. He was talking about how he was worried that, when you break a hip, you can sometimes cause, I don't know, cancer or something. He was worried about a blood clot. I don't know what could happen. Do you know about that? When you break a hip, can it become cancerous, or what is it that is the risk?
No. When the blood is pushed in.
I know there's blood clots.
Right? And so
Yeah.
it makes a blood clot. And it can hit your heart, hurt your brain.
Maybe that's what he was talking about. I know there's blood clots, but it seemed like it was something to do with cancer. He was worried that there was some area on his hip, or his backside, really, to be honest, that was, he's all worried. He has a nurse come, they come every 2 weeks and to check it and just make sure he's okay, health wise. He has home health care. And he was talking about this thing on his backside, and he was really worried. And he has his friends, and on the week that the nurse can't come, he has a friend check it for him because he's so worried. And I'm like, he was like kind of hinting that he wanted me to check it, and I'm like, because I'm a caregiver, he knows we talked about me being a caregiver. And I'm like, would you like me to make sure it's okay? And because he was really obsessed with it and upset about it. And he's like, "Yeah, will you check it?" And I'm like, "Yes, sure." And then he stands up and he drops his pants and he has nothing on. He's totally naked and he's erect. Nothing like that has ever happened between my Uncle Norm and me ever in my entire life. When I lived with him, lived in his house, you know, yeah, some ABUSE happened. I was DRUGGED, and yeah, things happened with Colin and him. Yeah, and he had kids next door that were selling him DRUGS at that time in '98, and Norm has he's always done DRUGS. And he was, at the end when he kicked me out of the room where I was staying and put a lock on my door, when he kicked me out of that room, so I would have to camp out in his front living room. That's when I left. Okay, in '98, that I left quickly because I knew I was not safe, because the guys next down the street were checking me out. I knew he was gonna like sell me, and that was not gonna happen. And I got the hell out, and I went back to LA at the time. Okay, so anyway, but during that time, nothing like this ever happened. When I'm he knew never to cross that line with me. We've never had that kind of situation, relationship, nothing. It's never been inappropriate like that ever. And it was just such a shock. And that's how I know dementia. He is not the same man anymore. I was shocked, and I shocked. And I'm like, oh, there was nothing wrong with him. He was just trying to find an excuse to drop his pants. And I remember looking at, his, erect penis, and like, oh my God. And then he was like, oh, and he looked down, like he was looking at me, looking down at him, and he looked down to see what I was looking at. What do you think? I mean, I was shocked. and and then he saw his naked, exposed, erect penis, and he's like, oh, okay, nothing. There's nothing you're looking at. Okay, I mean, it was like the weirdest thing. And that was it. And then I guess he pulled his pants up eventually, I guess. And I'm just there in a state of shock. And I'm like, and he's like, well, okay, I've got some things I got to do. He was the one that like concluded our conversation, and I'm like, yeah, no problem. And he's like going to the door, and I'm like, do you need some help or anything? And he's like, no, no, no. Like he didn't want me to help him. I don't know. I guess he's realizing, oh no, I screwed up. I don't know. I don't know what was happening. I guess he was worried that I was going to tell the world, and I am right now. At the time I kept it a secret because I was so shocked. I came home and I told my husband, and my husband was shocked as well. I guess that's what he does with his the women friends who come over and walk with him, and the nurses, and So I'm telling the whole world, yeah, I am. So yeah, he was very very good at keeping the secrets and everything, and not revealing anything to me about my money, even though he talked to me in the old days about it. But yeah, he was very inappropriate with me for the first time ever. I mean, there were things that happened with my Uncle Steve when I was a baby. And I think that's why when I mentioned Uncle Steve, we were talking about Uncle Steve, that was his younger brother who's now deceased. That's how it got in his head. Oh yeah, let me do this to Claire. What he was thinking. I don't know what he was thinking, and that's how I know he has dementia. I mean, it was confirmed. I mean, I knew it before that moment in time, but yeah. So yeah, I left, and that was it. And after that, Dean and I decided not to move to Salt Lake City, even though it's a beautiful place. I have really good memories. Um, because I went through a lot, when I first got there, and it was not a manic episode like they were trying to make it seem. I was breaking through and remembering new things that I had never remembered before. And when a brain releases a lot of new memories at once, it can mimic kind of a manic state. It can. And that was explained to me by a doctor somewhere. And it was Daddy who explained it to me, I know. But it's not a manic, I was having a lot of a lot of memories surfaced at once at that time in my life. And it was a joyous thing to finally remember my history and me in those mountains. They put me in, when I came, they took me to the hospital and over at the University of Utah. And I made a video about this. I actually filmed when I was there, and it wasn't the hospital where they put me. They put me in a research center and it was not where they take people to the hospital, the mental health hospital on the University of Utah. It was a research center right next to the mountain. And I remember that cool, big, huge mountain. Just, I have such good memories because I was in such a joyous state, having remembered everything, remembered my true history, and those mountains. It was like a spiritual thing, it was like a spiritual experience. And, they wanted me to think it was, they were trying to make it, oh, yeah. They were trying to, I remember the doctor. She was a woman, and she seemed very masculine. She reminds me of Guislaine Maxwell, actually. And really, I wouldn't be surprised if Guislaine Maxwell had alternate personas, and I really wouldn't be surprised if that woman was her that was in the hospital. I swear. It's I don't know. She worked for these people in the CIA. She was not in the CIA because she was British, right? But the British have their own form of the CIA, and they have disguises, and they have they play different roles, they take on different names, right? And like 007, right? And that was, by the way, that was fashioned. 007 was Daddy's character that he fashioned after his life, and kind of like the dream version of his job. He created that character, every man's dream, with all the women and stuff. That was Daddy's creation, 007. But yeah, I really wouldn't. The doctor at the University of Utah, who I swear she was just like Ghislaine Maxwell. She was just like her. She looked like her. She acted like her, and I thought she was gay too. I thought she was a lesbian. Short, straight, dark brown hair. Yeah, and this doctor was trying to get me to. She was testing me, to see if I was manic, and she knew I wasn't manic. She was like, oh yeah, a lot of people call this I don't know, the promised land, or what is it called, I don't know, some spiritual, the Mormons, they consider it to be the promised land. The term that she used, I can't think of it right now. And I'm like, yeah, I understand why they would see it that way, because I had a really special. It was really I had a really special experience coming here, and I can see how people might feel that way about this place. And she was like, "Oh my God, she's not manic." I was not in this like place, you know, I was in a state, a happy state because I was remembering things, and it was kind of like a spiritual experience for me, all these memories surfacing. But this doctor knew I was not manic, and that the diagnosis was not true, and she was shocked. She was like, "Oh my God," she was trying to test me, and I was not passing the test. I was not manic, you know. And this was a research center, and it wasn't really the hospital part of the campus. That was in the front. This area was right next to that big mountain, and I just remember that big mountain and the cool air that came off of it. And that's what I remember about Salt Lake City. You know, it's those mountains, they're very special to me. And I revisited that part of the University of Utah when I went back, you know, at that time when, as I'm describing. And that was really great to re-experience. And I have it, you know, I have a lot of footage, and I'm going to make a video about it. I'm going to make it into a video one day soon. And in the video, I'm very careful to not tell what my uncle did to me. I mean, it was so shocking. I refer to it as being really shocking, and that it's proof positive that he has dementia and that he needs his niece there to help him, you know. And that's maybe what I meant to do. I At the time, I really was sincere, and I really thought this was maybe what I was meant to do. And but it yeah, it you know, that was my I was thinking I was going to make it public soon, and I wanted to protect him and not make that public. But you know, a few years have gone by, and I don't really feel that way anymore. So, soon after that, I decided we weren't going to go to Salt Lake after all. And I sent him a Christmas card last year. "Oh, you know, I know this will be a relief for you. We made the decision not to move to Salt Lake, and we decided to go to the Wellsville, New York area where my mother is from." He was thinking, when I was talking to Norm, he was forgetting that he was thinking his ex-wife was from New York State, and his ex-wife is not from New York State. She's from that part of Utah. And I'm like, "No, my mother is from New York State, not your ex-wife." He really connects my father's wives with his wives. It's kind of funny. Anyway, but this is where I moved, to where my mother's from, where my mother's family's from.
And your grandpa's house.
Right. This is my great grandpa built this house, and my grandpa grew up in this house. It's, you know, somebody saved it. It was kind of dilapidated a number of years ago, and somebody saved it, you know, wanting to make it their house without a lot of money. And at least, and that's why it's as livable as it is. But it still needs a lot of work. And we're going to need some money to do that work. It's going to be really hard without any money. All right. Well, I've been on for an hour and a half. If anyone has questions, you know, please put them in the comments, so I can answer them. Oh, look, somebody has given me a comment. Nobody's worried about the victims. The only word about Trump being identified. Nobody's worried about the victims. The only word about Trump being identified. Yeah, I guess Farron, you're talking. Let me just put you on the screen. Let me show it. Nobody's worried about the victims. The only word about Trump being identified. Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, there are two little children dead. So I think it was an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. There were 17 people injured. And I think a couple of them were adults. The rest were children. The shooter, he shot from outside the church. I guess he locked them in the church so they couldn't exit or get away. And he just shot through the windows. I guess that's And actually he's a she, right? She's um yeah, yeah, Trump, yeah. She put something about KILL Trump. Yeah. And of course, MAGA is gonna get all wild and crazy about this. This is true. They're gonna say, see the left, the liberal left, and they're gonna blame everything. But the shooter of Trump, was a registered Republican. This doesn't usually happen. That it's somebody who is identifying with the left. It doesn't usually happen that way. You notice, but they're gonna jump all over this. um, it's always a really sad thing, I here I was talking about the shooter, but the shooter is is a person too, and when somebody goes to this length, it's you have to understand. It's very important to understand how people get to this point. If we don't focus on the shooter at all, and we don't try to understand how somebody got to this point where they pulled the trigger like this, then we ignore the cause, and this happens again and again, and it seems like that's what happens. It's very tragic. I mean, of course, it's a horrible thing that happened to children, innocent children, and in a church where they're praying. It's the last place you think that something like that is going to happen. I mean, I guess it does remind me of that Jewish temple where it happened years ago, right? There was a shooter there too. Yeah. But I think, though, as a society, we need to focus on the shooters, to understand, what happened. They're not just mentally ill and, let's just not even talk about them. There's a reason why someone gets to that extent, and they're young. Usually they're young, and we need to look at the cause of such behavior to prevent it from ever happening in the future. I don't think people are so careful. They don't want to glorify it and give the guy attention, or it usually is a guy. But if we don't really try to understand, it's just going to keep going on and happening again and again. That's why I really like to understand the person who did that commits such violence. They are human beings too, and somebody did something to them, and this is how they're reacting. I mean, like I said, I know for a fact that when somebody transgender identity, when somebody feels like they're in the wrong body, yeah, let me go on to explain. My cousin Colin, he has genes from my father, Dennis Wayne Elliott, right? And Dennis Wayne Elliott had my sibling, my youngest sibling, who is now identifying as gender neutral, who used to identify as a male in a woman's body, a girl's body. But they revised that to be gender neutral in 2020, or maybe 2019, just prior to their father's death that year. And it's the genes, it's genetic, because Colin is also a genetic child of Dennis, my father. He's actually my genetic brother, even though I grew up with him as my cousin. And in adulthood, after getting married, and um even after, I mean, I don't know how long it went on. I think it was something he kept secret for, like, maybe, I don't know, most of his life, I guess. I don't know. But he lived his life, as he was a boy, he was a man, and I knew him as a boy, as a man, a young man in high school. He was 15 years old when I lived with them. He reminded me of my brother, actually, and my brother is a genetic child of my father as well. And he grew up, in adulthood. He finally decided to let the world know, that he is a woman, and he lives his life as a woman now. I mean, he obviously, he hasn't had any surgery as far as I know, and he changed his name. And and this is something I found out at a certain point, and I was really surprised. I had no, it was Norm who told me about it. I didn't have any idea, um, until he told me. And he's still married. He had a baby a few years back. Um, I think he has 2 children now, I guess, or maybe, I'm not sure. I don't keep up with it. And um he he dresses like a woman, and he has a new identity. I just don't know if that's going to mean surgery one day or not. He is married, and his wife is very supportive, and I think that's wonderful. I said that my brother, I caught him on on a city bus dressed up as a girl, and I remember when we were kids, we used to, like, I'd give him my nightie, and he'd give me his pajamas, and he was Mary, and I don't know what I was. I was Joe. I had his lunchbox. I was Joe, and he was Mary, and he really got into being Mary, and he was like, in my nightgown. I didn't know how much he liked that. I had no idea. I just thought it was funny. It was just funny. And my mom would always joke, "Oh, Claire, you're trying to be a boy, but you look like a girl." You couldn't look like a boy if you tried. I remember she was always saying that, which was very thoughtful and sweet. My mother could be really sweet and loving at times. She could. But I think my mother said, "But Mark does look like a girl." I think that, he was still a boy. He hadn't reached adolescence or anything. I think that was why she said that. Like, "Claire, you couldn't look like a boy if you tried, but Mark, he really looks like a girl." And I'm sure that thrilled Mark very much. And I didn't know how much it thrilled him, okay? I didn't know how much it thrilled him till that moment in time. So it's a genetic thing. It run, obviously Dennis Wayne Elliott carried those genes, and I think I carry them, but I don't. It didn't happen to me. And it's triggered by, I told you, SEXUALABUSE. It's only triggered by that. And Colin watched. He saw what was being done to me. I mean, he was part of that. With me being DRUGGED. And what it is they long to be the person with all the attention, and that was a woman in my, when it came to Colin. And my brother, the same thing. I got all the attention because everybody was focused on me, and it does something to their mind, and they want to be the woman that gets all the attention. And my brother, I guess maybe he's a secret cross-dresser to this day. I don't know. Maybe he leads a double life. He's still a man. He's not, he leads his life. I mean, I don't know him anymore, so I wouldn't know how he lives his life. But, he's used to living a double life. Our whole family is having the facade and living, a different way behind the scenes that nobody knows about, having a top secret existence. So who knows what he does secretly. But at least I'm really happy when people come forward and are public about it, like Colin has been, and I'm really proud of him. And I there's an instance when I was staying with them. I was going out with David at the time, David Wayne Craig, the guy I talk about who is the real OJ. He's the one who KILLED my brand new husband, Ron Goldman, in 1994. And if I guess I can put this on the screen. Let's see. Where is it? Here it is. This is my book. You can pre-order the second edition now if you want to. The first edition is no longer in print. I'm going to stop sharing, by the way. Okay. Yeah, so I was going out with David at the time when I was living in Salt Lake City with Norm and Colin. And my cup that David had bought me, it was a cup with flowers all over it. It was like a painting, some famous painting that has a lot of flowers on it. It was really pretty. I loved it. And it kept disappearing out of the kitchen. And I'd always find it in Colin's room and in the bathroom that he had in there. And I kept removing it from he was using it for his toothbrush or something. And I'm like, no, this is my cup that my boyfriend bought me. I kept removing it from his bathroom and putting it back in the kitchen. And then I'd turn around and I'd see it back in his bathroom with, he kept stealing my cup that my boyfriend bought me. And with all of this thing with his gender, want him now a woman. Now that was like a little telltale sign, that even back then he was feeling like a woman and wanted to have some feminine cup in his bathroom. I remember thinking, that is so odd that he wants this cup. It's mine. It's my boyfriend got it for me. He wanted my cup and I didn't let him have it. And when I got it home, when I removed it from the house, eventually I got it home and it broke. I'm sure he willed it to break because he wanted that cup and it broke. All right. Well, I guess that's it for now. I mean, it's going on almost 2 hours now. I really appreciate you watching. Let me make sure there's no more comments or anything. No. Thank you for your comments. And please, if you have any questions, put them in the comments, after this live stream is done. You can ask me any questions you want in the comments, please. I really would enjoy responding to. I would really appreciate some kind of interaction. It would help me know what to talk about, what you're interested in. I want to know what you want me to talk about. Okay. So, I deserve a thumbs up. So give me a thumbs up. I deserve it. And if you're ready for the truth, please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great one. Over and out. Peace out. Oh, and I'll do my outro now.